There's so much coronavirus news around today, it's pretty hard to digest it all. This is an issue that moves as fast as the virus itself. Let's start with the basketball in the US. This brings home how life is changing and could soon change for all of us. The entire NBA competition has been suspended after a Utah Jazz player tested positive. The famous Coachella Music Festival has been postponed as well. Australia's Dark Mofo celebration in Tasmania has been cancelled. Now, remember, many of these cancellations and postponements are not directly to stop the spread of the disease, but because of the financial risk of going ahead when no one is travelling. But some of the events are being cancelled to help stem the spread of the COVID-19 virus. And we're left to wonder how far the bans will go here. Some schools have been shut, as you know, as a result of infections. A number of conferences and gatherings have been cancelled. And we're all left to wonder whether sporting events and other mass gatherings will soon be affected.
This is going to be a major policy question, not in weeks and months, but in days. Do we keep having big events? Will we teach school from home? We've got to have more social distancing, and that is the only way to stop this pandemic being worse than it might otherwise be.
Now, there's no doubt, of course, that travel bans, more travel bans, lockdowns and cancelled crowd events would help to stop the disease from spreading. But what's necessary? What's too much? And what about the costs and consequences? Every event cancelled costs money and jobs and adds to disruption. You don't want to do it unnecessarily. The Prime Minister says he'll rely on Australian medical advice.
Well, it's very simple. You follow the health advice. I'm going to the footy this weekend. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm sure many Australians would, and I encourage you to, unless you're ill. And unless there's a reason that with your own, if you're in self-isolation for medical reasons or you're actually ill, then I wouldn't suggest you go.
Two of Australia's latest coronavirus infections just happen to be some of the most famous names in the world. Hollywood actor Tom Hanks and his wife, singer Rita Wilson, have tested positive on the Gold Coast and are in isolation in hospital. This, as the US President has broadcast a live address to America, in which he announced new measures, including a 30-day ban on arrivals in the US from Europe.
It only matters how you respond, and we are responding with great speed and professionalism. Our team is the best anywhere in the world. At the very start of the outbreak, we instituted sweeping travel restrictions on China and put in place the first federally mandated quarantine in over 50 years.
Little wonder then that suddenly the coronavirus story has gotten very real for Americans. This latest front page from the New York Post has the world turned upside down, with the NBA suspension, Europe travel ban and Hank's infection cited, along with the cancellation of the city's famed St. Patrick's Day parade. With its huge and mobile population and masses of overseas visitors, the US faces a mammoth task to combat the virus. But Trump derangement syndrome is in overdrive. It's kicked in again, with some media more interested in criticising the president for pointing out that a virus from outside the country actually comes from outside the country.
One of the points that the president wanted to make tonight, wanted to get across to Americans, is that this virus did not start here, but that they're dealing with it. Now, why the president would go as far as to describe it as a foreign virus, that is something we'll also be asking questions about. But it should be pointed out that Stephen Miller, who is an immigration hardliner who advises the president, is one of his top domestic policy advisors and speechwriters, was a driving force in writing the speech. And I think it's going to smack, it's going to come across to a lot of Americans as smacking of xenophobia.
These people are obviously nuts, aren't they? Where the virus originated is kind of central. It's a central factor in this whole issue. It's why travel bans, for instance, are part of the picture. Trump also announced more economic stimulus, and that was the order of the day back here as well, where Scott Morrison and Treasurer Josh Frydenberg seem to have given up on economic growth this quarter, and they're going to start pumping $17.6 billion of cash handouts, tourism assistance and subsidies to protect jobs into the economy from the start of the next quarter at the end of this month. So the budgeted surplus has been killed by the coronavirus, which will continue, of course, to massively disrupt the global economy for weeks, if not months to come. But the government's resort to stimulus might not do much to limit this crisis on the economic side. The hit to the economy might be too big to be resisted in the medium term. Whether it works or not, though, we now know we will be stuck with more debt and deficit into the future. That's one of the few things we can be certain about. Another one is the tardiness of the World Health Organization. They've now declared this outbreak a global pandemic. And they've made that declaration about 3 weeks after most sensible governments started treating it as one.